Hey, beautiful souls, welcome back to another episode of Pleasure Principles, the podcast where we strip down the layers of what pleasure really means. So, we talk about self worth, connection, intimacy, and all the juicy things, unspoken truths that shape our inner and the outer worlds. I'm your host, Avik, and today's episode is going to stir something deep within you. Because today we are not just talking about healing, we are talking about embodied healing. My guest today is someone who has turned her pain into purpose and her purpose into the power. Pamela Williams. So, welcome to the show, Pamela.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Avik. Pleasure to be here.
Lovely. Lovely. So, Pamela, before we start, I'll quickly love to introduce you to all the listeners. Dear
Mhm.
listeners, Pamela is an emotional intelligence coach, a metaphysical practitioner, the author of the powerful book How Do I Find Love After Heartbreak? And the creator of the scientifically recognized Ramoni Method, a practice that bridges emotional wounds with physical symptoms in the body. So, from our work with the troubled teens and the child protective services to helping executives navigate toxic relationships, she has witnessed firsthand how trauma echoes through through our lives, and more importantly, how we can transform it. So her story is raw, radiant, and real. So she rebuilt her life as a single mom after abandonment during the pregnancy, and now she's pursuing a PhD in psychology. So diving deep into how the mind, body, and the soul function together to heal. So yeah, all I mean, she is a part of the Christ-centered wisdom and uh, part crystal healing mystic, part livable FC fanatic, and all hard. so, uh,
I
yeah,
like
so,
that.
yeah. So, dear listeners, I'll not take much of your time, so I'll quickly invite again to the show. Welcome to the show again, Pamela.
Thank you, Avik. Thank you for having me. And hello, everybody.
Lovely, lovely. So, Pamela, your journey is layered and profound. From as I was mentioning, from abandonment to the purpose. So, how did you begin to trust yourself again in the middle of the heartbreak?
That's a fantastic question, Avik. Yeah, it's difficult to bounce back from emotional pain, right? Because we feel it so deeply. And
Yes.
for me, what it took, and I genuinely believe this, spirituality is as important to the healing journey as breathing. Because as you're experiencing and going through pain, there is like a part of you that wants to stop the pain, right? We've got the principle, pleasure seeking principle, sorry, and an aversion to pain, right? So we always want to chase something that feels good and be averted to what doesn't feel good. And what kept me going, moving through the cycle to build resilience, was my faith in something beyond. That was what kept me going. And so I was able to kind of do the deep dive in work that I needed to do in order to heal. If you believe that there is something to strive for, something to go towards, you're more likely to keep going. What keeps us stuck in pain is the fact that you maybe cannot see a way out of it, right? Hopelessness. But when you see hope, and to me, faith and spirituality is that was the beacon for me that kept my North Star and kept me moving forward. And how I was then able to do the work needed. That's part of the Ramoni Method. The foundation is support, leaning on support. And then the next layer is acknowledging the doubts that you have in your own mind. And then going from there as to what are those doubts? Like, why is this happening to me? What have I done to this deserve this? And then the emotions that come with that, right? Abandonment. So for me, what I examined, I took control over what I could. And that was the fact that I made the choice to go out with this person in the first place.
And
You know? So what I would say is you have to take control of the things that you can, which was for me in my story that I made the decision to go out with somebody who didn't treat me right. And I knew by taking that part of my story and owning that, I was less likely to make that mistake again. And I didn't make that mistake again. So that was the first step in moving forward, bouncing back from a core wound of abandonment.
Exactly. No, I agree. I totally agree. So, okay. Now, the thing is, do you think that the heartbreak can actually be a spiritual initiation, or maybe something that forces us inward to discover who we really are?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I really believe that, you know what, whenever you encounter a toxic person, they show up as a mirror.
Mm,
People show up as mirrors, and that mirror is showing you the work that you maybe need to do in yourself, you know?
mm,
And for me at that time, it was, I wasn't as secure in myself. And this person showed up to help me work on my own insecurities. So when we go through a heartbreak, yes, it's devastating at the time, but it's more so for a change. And I don't believe that any change is bad. All changes that occur are either for personal development or spiritual growth, spiritual enlightenment. And when you're able to cognitively shift your mindset to see things that way, and adversity
yeah,
becomes more of something that you can move through, right?
mm,
Something that you can take action
mm,
and then move forward by visualizing a better outcome for yourself,
mm,
right? Trusting the process. These are all
mm,
parts of the Ramoni method that I developed because of my experience of
mm,
dealing with adversity and being able to maintain resilience. So,
mhm,
heartbreak is fundamental to building our character and developing, I feel, spiritually. Absolutely.
mm. Understood. I mean, that resonates deeply. I think so many people are walking around looking that hole, but inside they are kind of still carrying that first heartbreak
Mhm.
that told them they weren't enough. So
Right.
uh, exactly. So your perspective flips the script, and it invites power into the pain for sure.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. Yeah. And the Ramoni method is is such a kind of unique approach, I would say. So if you can break down like how emotional wounds translate into the physical symptoms.
Sure, absolutely. Well,
Mhm.
I believe that we are emotional beings that think, right?
Yeah.
And in real time, you'll see this
Mm.
emotions ending up affecting the body through stress. So
Exactly.
to me, stress is something that anything that
Mm.
dysregulates the nervous system, right, to
Mm.
act and go into fight, flight, freeze, or fawn, right?
Mm.
And once that occurs, it sets off adrenaline and cortisol. And as soon as that happens, obviously, then it puts your body into, okay, am I going to run? Am I going to react? Am I going to think and then respond? You know, so straight away, your heart starts pumping, your muscles get ready to move. Like it's affecting your body just by what you've seen, what you
Yeah.
think, and then the emotion that comes with it. Because truly, a thought is just a thought until you attach an emotion to it. And once you attach that emotion to it, then your body jump starts. But the
Mm.
problem is we have a propensity to avert pain, as we talked about earlier on in your podcast.
Yeah.
And when we do that, we don't acknowledge how we're feeling because emotions are normal. There's no bad emotion. There's just either emotions that bring warnings or emotions that bring pleasure. And so
Mm.
when we feel jealous, for example, if you feel jealous, a lot of people feel ashamed of that and hide that. But it's like you shouldn't hide that because feeling jealous, that could translate to you then taking action against another person because you might be jealous of their house or their success or who they've married. And when you don't acknowledge that, it settles in your, I call it the pineal gland energy center. But of course, you may know that as the third eye, right?
True.
And so the Ramoni method still encompasses holistic techniques. It bridges the gap between science and holistic techniques, basically. And so when we go through an adverse traumatic experience and we feel an emotion, but then we suppress that emotion, it ends up in our body basically through our electromagnetic field, otherwise known as the aura. And it seeps into our body that way and through the 7 energy centers. And that's its way in because that's attached to the endocrine system. So that's why it's so important that whatever you feel,
Yeah.
you need to express it and not to be ashamed of that, because ultimately it will end up in the body that in a space that correlates to that emotion. So like I've said, the pineal gland is associated with a function of connection and intuition, right? And if you're suppressing that, the malfunction will show up. When you're jealous, you'll have sinus issues, headaches, that sort of thing. So it's telling you, hey, this is work that you need to do. By the time it ends up in your body, it's bringing you information. And that's the information that's coming from the subconscious saying, hey, this is work that we've got to work on. We got to do this. And part of what the Ramoni method does help you do is unearth what those issues are in you so that you can free yourself from emotional baggage.
Exactly. Very true. That's amazing. I mean, it's powerful because, like, the body is always speaking, but most of us were never taught the language. So that's
Right. That's true. That's a great way to look at it, Avik. Actually, yes.
yeah. Yeah.
Actually, yeah.
So, I mean, you have worked with executives, high performers.
Mhm.
Uh, so what patterns do you see when it comes to the emotional repression and the kind of toxic relationships in the workplace?
It manifests. Yeah. This is the key thing to remember is that in our personal lives, you have relationships and connections that you build with people, but when you're working, that's when you're at work, that is the next place you spend the most time at. Some people, especially of high executives that I've worked with,
Yeah.
will spend more time at work than they are at home. So whether you like it or not, whatever you have in your personal life, you're going to bring that into the workplace. And a lot of what I see when I'm working with executives is obviously they're stressed, right? It's trying to make decisions that are not tainted with their emotions. That's a place where you want to be able to manage your emotions so your emotions are not affecting your decisions. And that's why emotional intelligence is so important because, as I said before, a thought is just a thought until you attach the emotion to it. And in that setting, what I see the most of is not being able to communicate effectively with your team, not being able to see, because people just want to be seen, heard, and understood. And when they don't feel that they're seen, heard, and understood, it spills out and creates a toxic work environment, which also has something to do with upper management, right? Because
Yeah.
there's an old African proverb that my mom would always tell me growing up. And it would say, when the head of the river is dirty, the whole river will be dirty. So basically, it's from the top down, right? So it's imperative for whoever's at the top to be emotionally clear so that what they're passing on to their colleagues and their team is strength, is inclusion, is inspiring so that they can be innovative, right? So that they collaborate. Because if the environment is toxic, it's difficult for people to collaborate, and people will be afraid to speak up, right? So that will kill innovation. So what my Ramoni method helps with is doing the deep dive work to figure out what your core wounds are that are preventing you from connecting in the workplace authentically, or not being able to cope with toxic people. And my best advice, if you're in a situation for coping with toxic people, you can implement what I call the 4R technique. That is, you take a moment and you retreat. And you're retreating just to create a little bit of distance so that you can do the next thing is reflect. When you're away, there's no distractions. You can then reflect on what went wrong and why. You examine that, and then you replenish. That is, you take time doing what fills your cup. And this is and you can implement that within any environment, any relationship. But as it relates to work, say, if that means you take a step out in your car and have a little meditation, because I mean, I've done that. That's what you do. When I work with executives, I'm like, why can't you just take a step back?
Correct.
You've got all this time in the 24 hours in a day. Just take 5 minutes. In the bathroom, somewhere you're alone, in the bathroom, in your car, you can do what you need to do that fills your cup. Get a drink, whatever that may be. And then you return. And that means you go back to your environment or back to the relationship, refreshed, calm, and centered. So in the workplace, it's challenging dealing with people, there's no doubt, but there are ways that we can manage that stress. And when toxic people, again, are coming to you, you have to examine, hey, what is the lesson they're bringing? Because there is a lesson that they're bringing too.
Exactly. True.
Yeah.
Amazing. So, and if we all embodied emotional intelligence, how different would be our relationship and maybe even our world look like? What do you say?
Oh my goodness. that that's but Avik, that's basically calling the world perfect. And sadly, I wish I could say the world's perfect, right? But sadly, this is the realm of duality, so it's never going to be that. But
True.
just imagine if we were all emotionally intelligent, that means there would be no arguing, there would be no fights, we would all be authentically connected. So there would be acceptance, there would be no rejection. Like it would be like heaven on earth, right? I think what creates a lot of the unstableness and the shifting that makes life so difficult is the toxic people that are here. Because I believe there's 3 types of people. There are what I call the bombers. And the bombers are people that they're here bringing lessons. They're literally like, they insert themselves in different parts of society, even the upper echelons of society. And their task is just to blow stuff up. There's no getting through to people like that. And I'm sure with me explaining that, people, your audience will think of someone and be like, oh, okay, that person's a bomber, right? And I'm not trying to limit, because labels do limit, but for the purpose of understanding, we have to have some type of description, right? So there's the bombers, then there's the lost. These are people who are kind of like on the way to the bombers, but they don't really want to go there. They are lost in their emotions and they are lost in their negativity, and they desperately are trying to figure out a way out. Some of these people will end up as bombers, but the majority of these people, they want help. And those are the people that you can reach, because then you have light, the light workers, or the people of light who have been lost, who have experienced heartache and heartbreak. But then their job then is to say to the lost, hey, this is the way. We'll show you the way. You come up this way. So in answering your question, yes, we would have a perfect world, right? If everybody was emotionally intelligent. But the goal is, and the goal of my work and my purpose is to help those lost people find their way. before they become bombers.
Mhm.
You know.
Yeah. Lovely. Amazing. So, any suggestions or advice you would like to share to the listeners?
Sure. I'm a really intuitive person, and you know, to me, that person from beyond is Christ, but it could take different forms. It meet the universe. It could be different forms for everyone. But times right now are really trying, and
Mm.
everywhere you look, there seems to be a lot of adversity.
Yeah.
But I really believe that and know that life moves in cycles. Everything is cyclical.
Mm.
So what that means is, even if you're in a storm right now, that means that
Mm.
storm will pass. And the avenue for helping you through that is leaning and tapping into support. So that means help from a friend or a professional, right? Be it a
Yeah.
therapist, a coach, whoever, and your friends. That means then doing the deep dive work that you need to do, even if it's just checking in with yourself for 5 minutes a day
Mm.
to acknowledge how you're feeling and then release it in
Yeah.
a healthy way. That means then develop a plan for yourself and then take action. If it's to
Mm.
get a new job, build a house, buy a car, chase a relationship that you've been wanting, whatever that may be. And then trust the process. Trust that process and then visualize a better outcome for yourself. And
Mm.
one of the greatest things you can do when you are in adversity is to accept your current circumstances, accept the reality. It doesn't mean you're giving up. It doesn't mean that you failed. What it's telling yourself is that I'm getting my head in the game so that I can make better choices. So you're letting go of baggage.
Mm. Mm.
And when you do that, you can continually nourish your body, your mind, and your soul. So my advice to you is just to keep moving forward. What I've just gone through there is the steps of the Ramoni Method. That's something that you can check out on my website, ramoniministries.com. But
Yeah.
two quick things that, like I said, you could do is accept your circumstances, accept the reality of the situation so that you can put a plan in. And there's always hope. There is always a way out.
Yeah. True.
Yeah.
Lovely. That's amazing. Really amazing. So, Pamela, thank you so much. And you have shown us healing in both science and soul, both surrender and strength. And to anyone who is listening right now, you are not broken, you are becoming. So,
Absolutely. I love that. I love that.
yeah. Yeah. So,
Thank
dear
you
listeners,
so
like,
much. Oh,
yeah.
sorry. What was
No issue. I was just saying, like, dear listeners, like, if Pamela's words stirred something inside you today, then go check out her book, How Do I Find Love After Heartbreak? And explore the Ramoni method as we discussed a lot about it today. And most of all, uh, give yourself permission to feel because uh, feelings don't make us weak, they make us real. So, um, that's very important. So, uh, dear listeners, like
it?
if this episode has moved you, do not keep it to yourself. Share it with someone who uh, needs a reminder that healing is possible, love is always available, and your body always and already knows the way the home. So, uh, so until next time, keep seeking, keep softening, and remember that the most radical pleasure is knowing yourself fully and loving yourself always. So, with this hope, this is your host Avik signing off from Pleasure Principles. Catch you soon on next episode. Thank you so much.